Freilla. I am from an organization in the South Bronx called Green Worker Cooperatives. You know, it was a few years ago, about 6 years ago now, when I decided to make the effort to start an organization based in the South Bronx that would be dedicated to starting up businesses. Not just any kind of businesses, but businesses that would actually be able to make the environment a better place. In my community, in the place where I come from, in the South Bronx. And I did that for a number of different reasons. Mind you, I didn't know anything at all about businesses. I just knew that there was a need for work, there was a need for jobs. I've been involved in community organizing for years before then. Been involved with a number of different organizations and challenged quite a few different garbage companies, waste companies, challenged the state on rerouting of trucks through the community, on business owners and incredibly large truck fleets that basically use our community as staging grounds, that really didn't take into consideration the fact that the community, the South Bronx, is one of the highest rates of asthma in the country. It's about 6 times the national average. And it's the poorest part of New York City. But people kind of run over that, take advantage of that. And it's a pattern all throughout the country. You know, wherever you go in the United States, pretty much around the world, it's people who have the least amount of access to power, whether it's because of income or because of race or because of any number of factors. And in this country, it's a combination, particularly of race and class. But whatever it is, people who are on the margins, who don't have the access to the lawyers, to the to the press, who don't have the quick and easy means of being able to spotlight an issue and say, no, we don't want this waste facility, keep it out. Those will be the communities. It'll be their communities where you'll see all of the electric utilities, the garbage companies, all of the heavy storage facilities, and that's the community that I come from. And it's for that reason that I had decided to start this organization called Green Worker Cooperatives, where we said what we would be doing would actually be creating the alternative, creating something different, something that would be able to serve as a model for people to say, we're not going to dump on that community anymore. Now, I bring that to you and mention it just as a bit of story of what it is that we're about, what it is that I decided to focus on. Like you, I had gone through school, gone through university, went and got a master's degree, and my focus at the time was really, going out into the world, outside of the country, and I figured I was going to do some kind of international, sustainable development type of work and be able to create a great, wonderful place. But I wasn't really thinking about my own community. I was thinking about what I thought of to be the environment. I was into science, and I thought that I would have to go away to be able to be involved in science and be involved in the environment and do something different. And then one day I heard a woman tell a story she was from a black farming community in Florida, which was nothing at all like the South Bronx. And that, we don't have farms in the Bronx, not big ones anyway. We got the little casita gardens, where some people have maybe some chickens, but, that's about it. Maybe some cilantro growing. But no mega farms, no sugar cane. That's what was growing in this community. And the woman was telling a story about how their community was being used as a dumping ground for all of the waste from the big mega farms in the area, and how people were getting sick from all of the pollution and all the pesticides in this community. All of the runoff from these farms were getting into the water supply, getting into the rivers, and people getting really sick. And people were trying to organize and stop it and say, they had high rates of immunological problems and a number of diseases that were impacted by the quality of their water and the quality of their air. And they would organize and have meetings, and the police would come in to shut down their meetings. People were getting bought off by the sugar companies in the area. And I sat down there after that and I thought about, who am I to really be leaving the community that I came from, to kind of run off and pay no attention to my own needs that I remember growing up. So that's why I mentioned this issue about accountability. If we have a different structure where people are actually feeling accountable for the operations of their businesses, then you have a very different kind of business, and you have a very different kind of society that the businesses are operating in. You have a very different kind of economy. And that's ultimately what causes a change. It's about people being accountable for their actions. So whether it's a group of students that are organizing other students to make some demand on the administration for some kind of change at the school, or whether it's people who live in a city organizing to hold the city accountable to institute some kind of a policy change, or whether it is residents of the community saying to a company, your practices are hurting us, they're killing us, they're raising the incidences of asthma in the community. I walked into classrooms in that community where this plant is and asked kids, how many of you have asthma? And I'd see 60 to 75% of the hands go up in the classroom. And that is ridiculously, unacceptably higher than the average. We're talking about 6 to 12%, in some places, maybe even 20%, which is incredibly high. But 75% is completely unacceptable. And that is a signal that you have a group, you have children who are being completely abandoned, you have a community that's been abandoned, and you have government regulatory agencies, the people who are supposed to be looking out for us, for our interests, looking the other way, instead of looking out for the kids and the people in the community that they're supposed to be looking out for. So those are the realities, and it was for that reason that we had to come back to the issue about being accountable. So that's the connection there, and I hope it makes a little more sense now. The fact that you can't separate the issues in a community, the issues of people, from the environmental problems that we're living with. Those things are necessary. For me, though, what's important is bringing that into regular daily life. To bring that peace of mind, that tranquility, that serenity from those faraway places and make it a part of the way that I live and the way that we live in a community. And for that, you have to think of it as more than just an issue of, the environment is some faraway place. But it's close to home, and it's about home. I walked out a little earlier now. I was in front of the Office of Student Activities over here on the left. And there's this really great board over there that says, ways to build community. And there's also this really good list that everyone has here about things that, I can do as an individual to really engage in environmental activism and being a good environmental steward. But I would say to really be a good environmental steward, to really be conscious of the environment that we're living in, you have to take this list that's here and combine it with that list of how to build community and use them both. Because if you don't have community, then you're really just an individual walking out into the street, standing on a soapbox, talking to yourself, and nobody's really listening to you. And you're not really building any kind of change for the long term and change for the future. And that's really what it's about. For us, I haven't said too much yet about what we actually do and the work that I actually engage in. But in the community that I'm from, what myself and others, what we had really latched onto was that it's important not just to be organizing against something, to say, we're fighting against this particular company, that NIAFCO, the New York Organic Fertilizer Company, but to really say, what are we fighting for? let's actually create that other world that we want to live in, that's something different, that's someplace different. If we want a different kind of business that's actually accountable, what would it look like? And I asked, I put that as a question to each of you. Whatever it is that you have an issue with, what would the alternative be? And that's not something, you get asked that, I'm sure if you're engaged in anything and you ever have a problem with something, and someone says to you, well, what do you want me to do about it? Or, what's the alternative? What other way is there? That's not a rhetorical question. People don't ask that as, well, just, get away from me. Sometimes people do. But for the most part, people are really looking for something else. And if you can't offer something else, then of course we go with the status quo. And if you tell me that, I just said a few things about what happens when you flush the toilet. What happens when you, I talked about what happens when you flush the toilet. But, if there's no other alternative to flushing the toilet and having all this stuff going to a place like Hunts Point or somewhere else, then what other alternative is there? So there has to be something else. So about 6 years ago, we started this organization, Green Worker Cooperatives, in order to help create the something else. And our focus is really about creating businesses that are actually able to be good environmental stewards, meaning that they can actually be a model of doing something differently, doing things in a different kind of way, and doing it, creating a business that is actually being a good environmental steward, and within that, being conscious of the fact that we're in a community and we have to build community, and that's part of our environmental obligation, to really build community. And looking within in the operations of the business and saying, okay, well, if this isn't going to be any ordinary business, what kind of a business would it be? And how can you make a business accountable? Well, for us, we recognize that if you want to make a business accountable, if you want to take that smokestack and connect it to the board meetings when they happen in Houston, Texas, of that sewage sludge company, then there has to be a change in how the business is owned and how it's governed. If there's going to be a connection between the people who make the decisions and the community that it's working in, then you have to say, well, who's going to own this company? Who's going to own this company, and how are things going to be different? And we love this idea of worker ownership, of a worker cooperative, which is basically saying that a business is owned by the people who actually work there. And there are examples of this all over the planet. And it's only practiced in a few places in the US, but today there are probably around 450 or so worker-owned businesses, completely worker-owned enterprises around the country. Around the planet, in certain countries like Spain and Italy, there's certainly a great deal more that occupy have a much more significant role in their national economies. And these are certainly businesses, for-profit businesses. The only difference is that they're owned by the people who actually work there. What happens, though, is that there's a direct connection between the community that business is operating in and the people who are actually working there. And it makes people more accountable. So we started a few years ago with this idea that we're going to start up these businesses that are not only green, but they're going to be not only environmentally friendly the way most people think about the environment, but they're going to be environmentally friendly in the way that we think about the environment too, which also includes people. So they're going to be connected to the community that they're part of. So we started our first one about 2 years ago now. It's called Rebuilder Source. It is a business that specializes in building materials. So everybody here has been to a Home Depot, right? Well, Rebuilder Source is basically a Home Depot, except that instead of having doorknobs that are brand new, that were trekked over from, maybe from a distribution center about 2 states over, and prior to that came from a ship that was offloaded, a few states over. What you have is basically a doorknob, the same doorknob that came from somebody's house about, 30 minutes away, or 10 minutes away, or down the block. And so the idea is very simply to take that cycle of extraction of resources, production of goods, distribution, consumption, and finally disposal, and to cut it short. And just, focus on that piece that's on consumption and make it a loop. Basically reuse everything that would have been thrown away. So keep the door as a door. Don't even break it down, and recycle it into something else. Just keep the door as a door. Put it back into somebody's house. It's in perfectly good condition. I've seen an incredible amount of waste just in the start of that first business that was really obscene. I mean, perfectly brand new stuff that was in the process of being thrown away. And I'm not just talking about things that are pulled out of somebody's house when you're doing a renovation. I'm talking about, say 5,000 cabinet doors from business that went under. And they tried to sell what they could, but they didn't have the means or the ability, or the landlord was breathing down their throat to get out. So they just had to call up a dumpster and basically chuck everything into the dumpster, and then they were going to send it off to a landfill, somewhere, a few states over from the Bronx out to Virginia. And it's an incredible amount of waste that is really obscene, it's ridiculous. It's a huge amount of value that's wasted, and it's a lost opportunity. Not only when you think of it as waste environmentally, but it's a waste of potential. It's a waste of jobs. There are things that are being thrown out all of the time. And New Jersey is a bit better compared to New York when it comes to manufacturing and production. New York has over the past 4 decades really done a job on really reducing the productive capacity, the manufacturing in the city. And all of the jobs that really made New York City and made places like the Bronx able to function and really provided working class opportunities for people have gone by the wayside, or a lot of them, not all of them. There's some, we're still kind of dangling on a thread, but all of those job opportunities have long since gone, or most of those have long since gone. And so there's an incredible amount of need for work. So when we look at the fact that we're throwing out in New York about 50,000 tons each and every single day of material that's being called waste for the pure fact that nobody knows what else to do with it, then it's an incredible amount of lost opportunity that's there. There's about 10,000 tons of building material that's thrown out each and every single day. So that means that whatever it is, the doors, the sinks, the windows, all of that is being completely wasted. And there's an opportunity for people to collect it and resell it. And that's what these folks at Rebuilder Source are doing. So they're creating job opportunities that didn't exist before. Because it doesn't take very many people to grab some stuff, from a site, throw it into a dumpster, and then send that dumpster out by truck to a landfill in Virginia or Pennsylvania or Ohio. It takes a lot more people to actually take that material, clean it up, make it available for sale, market it, sell it, do everything that is involved with a retail business. So there's an incredible amount of job opportunity that's there. So I've been running around the country and a lot of other people over the past few years, and we've been talking about going green as a way to really stimulate the economy, creating new opportunities that are out there, creating what we call green collar jobs or green jobs, and saying that we don't have to treat the environment as an issue that is strictly about the animals in faraway places, but it's very much a reality of how we live, even in a city, whether it's Jersey City or New York City, that we're talking about the air that we breathe, the water that we drink. What happens with where are all the resources coming from that we're using to power the lights whenever you flip a switch. Now you all are going using wind to generate your electricity. But probably if you go a block over, everybody else is using coal. Coal or maybe nuclear energy, but for the most part, coal. And so we're using completely destructive practices to live the way that we live, and what we're producing is an incredible amount of waste in the process. I mentioned earlier we buy so much and then it's ultimately gone in a matter of months. So there's an incredible amount of waste that's being generated in the process. And then the trick for us then is, if we want to do something different, then we really have to be creative. And at Green Worker Cooperatives, we really fully feel that any business, for the most part, any business can be flipped around and done in a green way. And so we operate in a way where people come to us in our community and they say, well, I've got an idea for a business I want to make it green. I like this idea about worker ownership. I've got a group of people, yeah, we're interested in it. So what do we do now? And so we go take them through a whole training process and work to actually have them develop a business plan for their business, and that's stage one. And so if you've got an idea for a business, then it's really about taking that idea, thinking through, what can make it green, and of course, going through the process of planning it out, making sure that it can survive as a business and that it can thrive. And we've got people who come to us and they've gone through our training and they're working on a business plan. Rebuild Resources one, and that's salvaging building materials. We've got a team that is working to develop solar thermal panels. It's basically using the sun in order to heat water instead of using a gas-fired boiler or water heater. We've got a few teams that are working on food businesses, so 2 green caterers and 1 diner, green diner. So their whole approach is healthier versions of traditional Latino, Dominican or Mexican foods, and also healthier variations on burgers and fries and grilled cheese sandwiches, and really coming up with things that are approaches that are more in line with being conscious of their environmental impact. So whether it's composting or the cutlery that they use, not using plastic, and looking for alternatives, coming up with different ways of doing things. Even a team they decided they were going to be consultants and they're going to help people develop environmental curriculums for after-school programs. So there are a number of opportunities for people to start up businesses that can actually improve environmental conditions and not just continue to accept the status quo and allow things to continue as is. If you want to start a business, there are certainly green ways of doing it. And if you want to actually create job opportunities, you can have that as an agenda and be green and do it in a way that really is about building community, building a new and a different kind of an economy, and doing it in a way that looks forward for future generations and recognizes that each of us has an obligation on this planet, an obligation to each other, and that really recognizes the divine, in each of us, and recognizes the divine in the communities that we're in. So I want to thank you for your time. I think I don't know if we have time for questions or anything like that. We do, okay. Well, thank you very much, and it's been a pleasure being here with you.
Thank you so much, Omar. That was amazing. That was really, really wonderful. We're really excited about some of the things that we've been doing at St. Peter's College to improve our impact on the environment. We Sodexo services and dining services. We no longer use styrofoam cups. We have trayless dining. We have the new environmental studies major. So we're in addition to the wind power, we're moving into the curriculum. So there's a lot of things that we're trying to leverage to improve institutionally. And there's ways that we continue to transform the culture among our students, greening up the clubs and government, student government and things. So at this point, I'd really like to encourage a couple of questions, how it kind of relates to your own experience here at St. Peter's College, maybe some of your future aspirations in employment. Specifically, now's a great time to ask a question. Lori Mentor, she was a student rep that joined a group of us with Jean Carlos Reyes, Humberto Spezzacatena, and Wilmot Wilson. We went to Keene University for students learning about going green and students learning about sustainability at various New Jersey colleges. So Lori is one of our ECHO reps, very proud for that. So she has a microphone. Any questions for Omar Freilla?
I just had a quick question in terms of the Project Green piece, the materials that you use. Do you get a lot of contractors coming to you to get the supplies, or is it mostly just private people, like individual homeowners who come in and kind of browse, kind of like with the Home Depot kind of thing?
Sure. The business that I was referring to is called Rebuild Resource. So they're the first cooperative, what we call a worker cooperative, worker-owned business that we helped launch. Their clientele, it's a mix of both. So they have contractors that come through, they have landlords, small landlords, who will own, say, 4 to 10 family apartment complex or building. And then you have individual homeowners. I would say most of their customers, maybe like 75% or so, are the individual homeowners, who have their own. They may be homeowners, they may be renters who are just doing a do-it-yourself project, painting the house, painting the apartment, doing something, or an artist will come through. But it's a mix. Yeah.
My question is, how many from like projects or business ideas go from actually being an idea to actually being established?
Well, that's a good question. Last year, for the first few years, it took us a while to figure out what we were doing and how we're going to engage in this process of starting these businesses, these worker-owned businesses, because our focus and our approach is very different. It's different not just in that we're looking at green businesses, but it's different in that we're focused on worker-owned businesses. So it's a different sort of model. And so it takes more time to be able to invest in a group of people and get them to the point where they get the business model, they get the business down, they get, working with each other down so they're not going to kill each other, when they start operations. So we started Rebuilder Source, that first company, with us as the developers. So we started up the business. It took us forever. It took us forever. When you're starting up a business, it took us about 4 years from day one of working on the business plan, doing a feasibility study, and then a business plan, and then raising the capital that we needed, and then bringing people on to train who wanted to be part of that business, and then to actually finding a space, and then to opening the doors. So that was about a 4-year process. Once we went through that, then we decided we're never going to do that again. Because it takes a long time, and we don't want to be the business owners. We're looking to create, have a number of worker-owned businesses and have lots of them. So we changed our approach last year, and so now our approach is people come to us with an idea. It's the approach that I mentioned earlier. So if you've got an idea, then and you live in the Bronx or in New York, you come to us with an idea, with a team of at least 2 other people, and then we would work with you for you to develop the business plan. So we did that last year, and we had 2 sessions. We called it the Co-op Academy, and so it was about 1 night a week for 4 months or 16 weeks. So there's homework in there, and people are basically working on developing their own business plan. And over the course of those two cycles, now we have there are 9. No, I misspeak. There's six other worker-owned businesses that are in the works. So these are 6 teams of people who are working on different businesses, and they're at stage 1, really. They either just completed a draft of a business plan, or they're about to complete a draft of a business plan. So then there's still work after that. They have to tighten it up, really test it, test out the market if they can. So the ones that are catering can start doing some modest catering to see, test the market, then really pitch the case, go out and try to get financing to actually start the business. So then they're at different stages of doing that.